little one. Join us!
On a sweltering, humid summer night in Japan, the air hangs heavy and thick, clinging to the skin like a damp cloth. With the windows flung wide open to catch the faintest whisper of a breeze, people seek solace within the fragile sanctuary of a mosquito net, hoping for a peaceful night of rest. Yet there is an existence that silently slices through this tranquility, a presence as thin as a shadow and as sharp as a razor. This is the yokai we are exploring today, the Amikiri. To a casual observer, the tales of this creature might seem like nothing more than a description of a minor, albeit irritating, prank played by a mischievous spirit. However, if we peel back the layers of history and folklore, we find a terrifying tenacity hidden behind its actions, a singular focus on destroying the very foundations of daily life and security. Have you ever woken up in the morning to find something you cherished? Something essential to your comfort, mysteriously damaged without explanation? It might not have been simple wear and tear or a mundane accident. It could very well have been the work of the Amikiri. Today, we will delve deep into the true nature of this strange-looking creature and the unsettling messages it continues to broadcast to our modern society. Long after the traditional mosquito nets have faded from our bedrooms, imagine for a moment the profound stillness of a summer night. During the Edo-period, in an era without the hum of air conditioning or the glow of electric lights, the mosquito net, known as the kaya, was the only true defense against the relentless swarms of insects that thrived in the heat. Inside the net, the air would be perfumed with the faint, earthy scent of incense or smudge sticks, and families would huddle together on their futons, finding a sense of communal safety in the soft green mesh that surrounded them. The darkness outside was absolute, filled only with the rhythmic chorus of cicadas, or the distant croak of frogs. It was into this deep, heavy silence that the Amikiri would creep, moving with a grace that defied the laws of physics. It did not break down doors or shatter windows. It simply appeared, a flicker of movement in the corner of the eye, that vanished the moment one tried to focus on it. The defining characteristic of the Amikiri lies in its specialized razor-sharp claws, which have evolved into formidable shears. With these, it begins its work, meticulously and rapidly, snipping through the delicate fibers of the net. It does not tear the fabric with brute force, but cuts it with the precision of a master tailor, one thread at a time until a gaping hole is formed. When the sun finally rises and the first light of dawn filters through the paper, shoji screens, the residents awaken to a sight that chills them to the bone. It is not just the discomfort of the itchy welts left by the mosquitoes that manage to find their way through the breach. Rather, it is the overwhelming realization that their most private, most secure space was invaded. While they were at their most vulnerable, the sight of the shredded net, its threads hanging like the tattered remains of a ghost, serves as a visceral reminder of the fragility of human order. In the psychological landscape of the Edo period, the home was a fortress, and the mosquito net was the inner sanctum. To have that sanctum violated by an invisible, silent entity was to realize that nowhere was truly safe. This was not a random act of nature, but a targeted strike against the concept of domestic peace. How would you feel if you discovered an invisible hole had been cut into your own bedroom? A breach in the digital or physical walls you rely on for safety? The lingering anxiety that follows such a discovery is the true legacy of the Amikiri. The physical form of the Amikiri is as jarring and nonsensical as its actions. In ancient scrolls like the Hayaki Yagyo Emaki, the Night Parade of 100 Demons, it is depicted as a bizarre chimera, a creature that seems to be composed of spare parts from across the animal kingdom. It possesses the head of a predatory bird with a sharp, curved beak and eyes that glint with a cold, inhuman intelligence. Its body is encased in the hard, segmented armor of a crustacean, reminiscent of a large shrimp or a lobster, providing it with a defensive shell that suggests it is well protected against retaliation. From beneath this carapace, a long, sinuous tail, much like that of a serpent, trails behind, allowing it to move with a liquid, undulating motion through both air and shadow. The most striking and terrifying features, however, are its front appendages, which have transformed into massive, powerful pincers. These are not the clumsy claws of a crab, but elegant lethal instruments capable of shearing through the toughest hemp or silk, as if it were nothing more than thin air. This combination of bird, crustacean, and serpent creates a being that exists outside the natural order. It is a biological impossibility, a manifestation of the other that defies classification. In the study of teratology, or the study of monsters, such hybridity often signifies a disruption of the boundary between different realms of existence. By blending the aerial, the aquatic, and the terrestrial, the Amikiri represents a threat that can come from anywhere. It is not bound by the limitations of a single environment. Why does it take this specific, grotesque shape? Perhaps it is because the Amikiri is not a product of the natural world at all, but rather a physical embodiment of human obsession, or the crystallization of the unseen malice that can fester within a community. It is the personification of the cutting, urge, the desire to separate, to ruin, and to disconnect. When you look at this twisted form, what does it evoke in your mind? Is it the fear of the unknown, or the realization that the things we build can be so easily unmade by something that doesn't follow our rules? During the mid-Edo period, the legendary ukiyo-e artist Toriyama Sekien gave the Amikiri a definitive visual presence in his famous work, Gazu Hyaki Yagyo. Sekien was a master of capturing the essence of the supernatural, often imbuing his subjects with a touch of dark humor, while never losing sight of their inherent dread. His depiction of the Amikiri emphasized the sharpness of its blades and the focused, almost industrial intent of its posture. In the historical context of that era, Japan was experiencing a period of relative stability and a significant rise in the standard of living for the common people. With this prosperity came an increased reliance on specialized tools and high-quality textiles. The destruction of such items was not a minor inconvenience in a society where everything was handmade and resources were carefully managed. The loss of a mosquito net or a fishing net was a major blow to a household's economy. For a modern audience, losing these items might feel comparable to having your smartphone suddenly bricked or your internet connection permanently severed. The Amikiri was a reminder to the people of Edo that their burgeoning civilization, for all its sophistication, was built on a network of fragile threads that could be snapped in an instant. The reach of the Amikiri extended far beyond the confines of the city bedroom. In the coastal fishing villages, the creature's presence was feared with a different kind of intensity. For a fisherman, his nets were his lifeblood, his primary means of providing for his family and his community. These nets were massive, complex structures, often the result of weeks or months of collective labor. They represented the investment of the village's time and capital. To find these nets shredded into useless ribbons overnight was a catastrophe that could plunge an entire family into poverty. What made these incidents so haunting was the lack of any audible sign of struggle. No matter how many watchmen were posted or how brightly the lanterns burned, the Amikiri always struck in the blind spots of human perception. It was as if the creature operated in a fold of time that we cannot access. This suggests that the Amikiri is not merely a physical predator, but a conceptual one, a being that exists to sever the causal links between effort and reward, between preparation and success. It is the sudden, inexplicable cut in the narrative of a successful life. To better understand the Amikiri, it is helpful to compare it to a more famous but similarly sharp-witted yokai, the kamaitachi, or the sickle weasel. The kamaitachi travels on the wind, slashing the skin of its victims with such speed and precision that the wound is painless at first. It is an agent of physical injury, a sharp reminder of the dangers of the natural elements. The Amikiri, however, rarely targets the human body directly. Its malice is far more indirect and in many ways more insidious. It chooses to destroy the tools we use to navigate and survive in our world. By attacking the net rather than the person, it undermines our agency and our sense of control. It is the difference between a physical assault and a subtle act of sabotage that leaves you stranded and helpless. While the kamaitachi leaves a scar on the flesh, the Amikiri leaves a scar on the lifestyle. It targets the mesh of our existence, the systems of protection and production that we often take for granted. Which do you find more frightening, the sudden sting of a blade against your skin, or the silent, systematic dismantling of everything you rely on to live your life? The traditional lore surrounding the Amikiri suggests that its appetite for destruction is not limited to nets made of string. In some older accounts, it is whispered that the creature would also target the fine kimonos of the wealthy or the laundry hung out to dry, leaving them in tatters without a single witness to the deed. Even more chilling is the metaphorical extension of this power. In Japanese culture, the concept of en, or the red thread of fate, represents the invisible connections between people. A net is the perfect physical metaphor for these social ties. When the Amikiri cuts, it may not just be cutting hemp or silk, it may be severing the bonds of friendship, the ties of family, or the promises made between lovers. In our modern era, where we are more connected than ever through digital networks and social media nets, the Amikiri seems more relevant than ever. Is it possible that the sudden, unexplained breakdown of a long-term relationship, or the viral spread of a misunderstanding that destroys a person's social standing, is a modern manifestation of this ancient cutter? We must consider how we protect the delicate seams of our own social and digital networks from these invisible shears. Regional variations of the Amikiri legend offer further insights into its multifaceted nature. In some provinces, it was believed that the creature was actually the spirit of a discarded or mistreated tool, a type of tsukumogami that had grown resentful and sought revenge on the living. This connects to the Shinto belief that all objects possess a spirit, and that neglecting them can lead to spiritual decay. In other areas, the Amikiri was linked to the sea, described as a crab-like entity that emerged from the waves to wreak havoc on land, perhaps symbolizing the unpredictable and destructive power of the ocean. There are also stories that conflate the Amikiri with the Amimenyudo, a much larger and more imposing specter that is said to have eyes in every mesh of a net. Despite these differences in form and origin, the core theme remains remarkably consistent. The Amikiri is a disruptor of order. It is a creature that arrives without warning to negate the structures that humans have painstakingly built. Its lack of a fixed territory or a predictable pattern only serves to amplify the fear it inspires. It is as pervasive and as elusive as the air itself. In the contemporary world, the physical mosquito net has largely been replaced by air conditioning, window screens, and chemical repellents. Yet, the threat of the Amikiri has not vanished, it has merely evolved. We live in a society defined by invisible nets. We rely on the intricate mesh of fiber optic cables that facilitate global communication, the complex web of supply chains that bring food to our tables, and the delicate social contracts that allow us to live together in dense urban environments. When a sudden cyber attack brings down a banking system or a technical glitch causes a massive blackout, we are experiencing a modern Amikiri event. The creature has adapted to the digital age, trading its physical pincers for lines of malicious code or the sharp edge of social isolation. The vulnerability we feel when our technological nets are compromised is the exact same primal fear that an Edo-period family felt when they looked upon their ruined kaya. The Amikiri continues to warn us that our reliance on these connections is also our greatest weakness. Why does the Amikiri exist in our collective imagination? Perhaps it serves as a necessary check on human arrogance. When we feel too secure, too comfortable in the nets we have woven, the Amikiri arrives to remind us of the entropy that eventually claims all things. It is a reminder that maintenance is not just a chore but a vital ritual for survival. In the psychological sense, the Amikiri represents the intrusive thoughts and the self-sabotaging impulses that can cut through our own mental well-being. It is that small, sharp voice in the back of the mind that seeks to undo our progress or sever our ties with others just when things are going well. By naming this force Amikiri and giving it a monstrous form, our ancestors were able to externalize this internal threat and develop cultural strategies for dealing with it, namely, the importance of diligence, the value of community, and the respect for the tools and traditions that keep the darkness at bay. If you were to stand in a quiet room in the dead of night today, far from the bustling streets and the hum of electronics, you might still hear it. A faint, sharp sound like the snapping of a dry twig or the clicking of a pair of scissors. If you turn around quickly, you might catch a glimpse of something iridescent retreating into the shadows. A tail disappearing behind a curtain or a claw slipping into a crack in the wall. The Amikiri is a master of the periphery, always existing just at the edge of our awareness. It thrives in the gaps between our certainties. As we continue to build more complex and interconnected lives, the shadow of the Amikiri grows longer. It is not something that can be defeated with a sword or a spell. It is a permanent part of the human condition, the shadow side of our desire to connect and protect. We must learn to live with the knowledge that the net can always be cut, and that our strength lies not in the invulnerability of our nets, but in our ability to reweave them whenever they are broken. Every time we repair a broken relationship, every time we rebuild a system after a failure, we are defying the Amikiri. We are proving that while the cutter is persistent, the weaver is more resilient. The ancient stories tell us that the Amikiri never stays in one place for long. It is a wanderer, a traveler on the winds of misfortune. This means that while its visits are unpredictable, they are also temporary. The hole in the net is not the end of the story. It is a call to action. It is an invitation to look more closely at the threads of our lives and to ensure that they are strong enough to withstand the next silent visitor. As you move forward through the heat of the summer and the challenges of your own life, keep the lesson of the Amikiri in your heart. Respect the connections you have, cherish the tools that support you, and never take the silence of the night for granted. I hope you enjoyed this talk about the Amikiri. If this story made you feel a bit of a chill or sparked your interest in the strange world of yokai, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. I would also love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had a mysterious incident where something important was broken or lost without explanation? Or is there another yokai you would like me to deep dive into next? I look forward to your requests. Until we meet again in the next exploration of the supernatural, please be careful on the night roads and take good care of the things and people you hold dear. Sleep well.